So I'm tired of hearing from Russia and its supporters that Russia is winning because there's been some slight movement on the map. Early land grabs are the easiest victories to lose. We've seen this in this war consistently, but also history is crowded with cases where a fast start ended in a full rollback once logistics, friendly coalitions, industry, and frankly, time and attrition did their work. Across multiple eras, this pattern repeats. Carthage raced into Italy and then Rome took it all back. Persia sacked Athens and then was expelled. England held huge swaths of France but ended up finishing with almost nothing. Napoleon's Europe spanning map evaporated. In the 20th century, World War I, Central Powers seized ground from 1914 to 1918 and then lost it all. The Axis powers in World War II took even more land from 1939 to 1945, and they lost every single inch. Post 1945, Greece surged into Anatolia and was driven out. Italy conquered Ethiopia and was expelled. North Korea overran most of South Korea and then got pushed back. Egypt seized the Suez Canal and then surrendered. Somalia's Ogaden gains against Ethiopia were flipped eventually. China grabbed towns in northern Vietnam and then withdrew. Argentina took the Falklands and then promptly lost them. Iraq annexed Kuwait and then subsequently was ejected, and Pakistan's Kargil Heights were eventually retaken by India. Oh, yeah, let's add in the greatest superpower to ever have existed, America, and their reminders that holding the map isn't winning the war. In Vietnam, the US could seize and reseize terrain at will. They controlled the population centers and beat back multiple attacks, yet couldn't turn that control into durable victory. In Afghanistan, the US toppled the Taliban in weeks and held cities and lines of communication for years. They built local forces, built infrastructure, commanded the entire battle space, and we still saw the gains melt away once the domestic costs compounded to an unsustainable level. Temporary control of terrain without sustainable legitimacy and logistics does not last. Russia has neither the legitimacy nor the logistics to hold the entirety of Ukraine, period. Hell, Russia's own historical record by itself should end this debate. In the Winter War against Finland, Moscow expected a quick collapse. Instead, it ran headlong into a smaller defender that used terrain, weather, and initiative to absolutely obliterate them, killing thousands of Soviets. Doesn't that sound familiar? In Afghanistan, the Soviets seized cities and highways and means of transport, then discovered that their garrisons were targets, their convoys were vulnerabilities, and the enemy with outside support could turn every kilometer into attrition and every aircraft into a coffin, especially thanks to the US made Stinger missile. Again, doesn't that sound familiar? Only perhaps replace Stinger with Javelin. After years of losses and mounting domestic strain, the Soviets withdrew from Afghanistan and then subsequently collapsed as a country. Two campaigns, two early successes, but zero durable gains, and more pain than it was worth. That history is relevant because Russia is on that same path today. First, they outrun their sustainment consistently. Every time Russia makes any kind of gains, they have to stop because they can't support movement more than a few miles forward. We just saw this again near Pokrovsk. This mirrors history. Napoleon, the Central Powers in World War I, the Axis powers in World War II, all hit the same logistics brick wall late in their wars. The Soviets hit it in Afghanistan too. If gun tubes, spare parts, interceptors, and trained NCOs can't keep up with attrition, the line weakens and every advance becomes a liability the deeper you go. Second of all, supportive coalitions can erase conquest once they scale. Think of Korea or the Gulf War after Iraq took Kuwait, and we can see how fast mobilization flipped the map. Now, Ukraine may not have the help of a mobilized force behind them, but Ukraine's backers do have deep finance, bigger industry, and faster tech cycles they can leverage than Russia, so long as they're willing to do so. But that is the problem. Where is the political will at the highest levels of the various governments across the world? Which, unfortunately, their will does matter. Now, third of all, as I've said, a war of attrition favors the defense. The more hostile ground you occupy, the more the occupiers will bleed you. We saw this in Ethiopia when the objectively stronger Italy was ejected. Again, the Soviets in Afghanistan and the US in Vietnam both proved that holding cities isn't the same as governing a hostile population that constantly places you under fire. Fourth, the more time that goes on, the more that Ukraine can iterate, the more they can deny Russian consolidation, the more they can hit deep targets and logistics nodes, and the more they can make every kilometer cost more for the Russians to hold today than it cost yesterday. That's exactly what they're doing, finding new and inventive ways to kill Russians and attrit their equipment. Couple that with Russia's overconfidence and the lies that are told up the chain, and it's a recipe for disaster in the long term. And finally, What the map doesn't show is the sanctions, the tech controls, the labor shortages, Russia's economic constraints, and difficulty replenishing the front line with both equipment and manpower. Early on, Russia could absorb those losses, but every day they absorb them is another day they won't be able to absorb them in the future. And Putin knows this, and that is why he is suddenly starting to look at the negotiating table. So many aggressor nations have held more ground than Russia does right now and still lost it entirely. Ukraine understands this, and their approach is to force that same outcome. Block Russia's ability to consolidate, strain their supply lines, strike their logistics deep behind lines, keep allied support flowing, and raise the cost of Russian occupation through unsustainable attrition. If those factors hold, the next major breaking story that we hear about this war won't be about this town or that town taken by Russia. It will be the familiar story we've heard throughout history that an overextended aggressor was unable to sustain multi year operations in another country and was forced to exit.